incredible breadth of experience. When I first met her, I remember going to the help group, and I was observing their preschool program, and I was shocked, because the year before I remember seeing it, it was a deadly, dull, strict ABA program. I thought, oh, and the next year I came in, I couldn't believe it. It had been transformed. It had elements of teach, floor time, as well as ABA. It was incredible. And there was Gwen directing. She had done that as her intern project. I mean, it was amazing. And then, next thing I know, she's taking care of all of the geniuses at Caltech, right? She's got that job. And so she's got this breadth. She takes care of children from the teeny preschoolers and the nonverbal, severe autistics like my child, all the way up to the verbal geniuses at Caltech. And she has such a breadth of methodology because she uses everything in a wonderful combination that's creative and works and individualized and family friendly. So, we're just so grateful that she's here. I mean, we would never have survived, the turbulent waters we've had dealing with Peter's severe OCD without Gwen, because her advice is eminently practical, full of experience, respecting the individual neurobiology of the child, and it actually does work. So anyway, Gwen?
Okay, this is common, because I'm short. Yeah. Well, I wonder,
You can take it off.
I can. This is like American Idol. Totally do. Thank you, Joyce. I had no idea that you saw young learners. I had no idea you saw young learners in the help group. Yeah, that was an intern project. And I did an ADOS on 26 3 and unders. That was a year to remember. Anyway, okay, so wow. Okay, so I think we should keep it cold in here so you stay awake. And we're gonna deal with OCD today. Just by a show of hands, how many of you struggle? It doesn't have to be personal with OCD. Okay, or it affects you in your life in some way, shape, or form. All right, so I always have to start with what it is and how we think about it, and then I get into some really practical stuff, and then inevitably, like in my practice, we make a really good plan, and then the plan goes out the window. That's what happens. Okay, so we're gonna ebb and flow and flex. I would love to take questions, but you know that if you ask a very specific question, if you ask a question, I want you to ask yourself if it's going to be helpful to others, okay? And then if you have a specific question about your little one, who might be 40, I don't know, then ask me privately after. Got it? Yeah, all right. I talk really fast, and I will try to correct that. And if there's something that doesn't make sense, just let me know. All right, should we launch? Let's launch. All right. So I think OCD is this really interesting disorder, actually, and it's a disorder. Okay, when I'm talking about OCD, it's not like I'm kind of obsessed with Star Wars, but I can kind of get on with life, So, here's the other thing I want you to do. If you have paper, stop writing. I'm going to treat you like my college students. All right. This is how you're going to retain the most information. You're going to hear the whole thing, and you're only going to draw out a summary of something very specific to you. So I don't want you to write verbatim. If you want, I can email you a copy of the presentation, and I will do that. But you will get more from it if you listen, grab a summary, and draw just a little, something that speaks to you. This will be invaluable to you, versus you going, I wonder what she said about that, but I have these verbatim notes. Okay? Those of you in college, right? Cornell note-taking system. Check it out. All right. So, don't frantically write, because I'll give it to you, I promise. All right? I'm not greedy. Here. All right, so OCD is a disorder. All right? And when we talk about it in this way, disorder means it's getting in the way of my life. I can't get out the door. I spend most of my time with a compulsion. Or I spend most of my time obsessed, thought-based. So let's break down what OCD actually is. It's an anxiety-based disorder, okay? The O stands for obsessions, and those are thoughts. They're really thoughts. Anxious thoughts, or images, or impulses that I really don't like. They're way outside of my control, but I have them. Another way we talk about these are intrusive, right? In my practice, we call them intrusive thoughts. So I don't like them, but they are intruding in my life, and I can't stop them, okay? The C of the OCD is the compulsion, or the behavior. And in OCD, we use the compulsion to neutralize the obsession. So a good example of this is hand washing. I don't know how many of you have dealt with germ phobias, okay. So this is actually something really common that I've dealt with, so much so like we grow germs in my office together, you know, kind of things, ridiculous things like this. But the hand washing would be the compulsion, the obsession is the thought that I'm going to get sick or die. Okay, so I'm gonna get sick and die, I just touched this doorknob, oh my goodness, right? And it plays and replays and replays, and it gets so distressful, I have to engage in hand washing. And then I get like this momentary like relief, and then what happens? You gotta get out, right? You gotta get out or in. So that's a tough one. Okay. The way I like to think about, oh my gosh, I'm such a klutz. If I fall over, you have permission to laugh, but then you have to help me at that point. Okay, so evident exhibit A. I'm just going to do this because I'm going to trip, is what's going to happen. Oh, here. Let's plug that back in. I broke it. Uh-oh. Clarence, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Oh, look at entertained. If you don't learn anything, you'll be entertained. All right. Okay, so the other thing, let's talk about this, is avoidance. Because this is another way that compulsions can really get in the way, which is when I know I'm going to be triggered by something, I avoid that situation. Do you see? So, because I don't want to be in that distress, okay? So what happens though if your compulsion or your obsession revolves around chairs? Like, where are you going then? You know what I mean? Like, if we think about how devastating that can be, when OCD really hits its click and it's really disorder, you really, really know. Okay, so, and we'll talk about what's not OCD. Okay. Are we good? Okay. So this is just a very simple picture of what the OCD cycle looks like, right? So I've got the thoughts, the obsessions. It leads to pretty severe anxiety, okay? I engage in my compulsion, right? To neutralize the thinking, to neutralize the anxiety that comes along with the thinking. Then I get some relief. But the relief is very temporary, okay? The problem with this too is this is reinforcing a neurological pathway that's now creating a habit. Okay, so every time you engage in this cycle, that neurological pathway strengthens. Yes? Okay. So that's just the way the brain works. So we want to kind of work with the way the brain works. Okay, here's what OCD is not. An obsessive personality trait. You know, I think colloquially we use obsessive. You're obsessed. You're completely obsessed with that, right? We just kind of throw that word around. But it's, you know, some people, bless you, some people are obsessive, but they can still work and they can still do their daily life, right? Okay, so that's not OCD. When someone likes to be neat, tidy, or orderly, that's not me, okay? But some people are, right? And that's just how they are, but they still get on with life. A routine, a religious practice, or a practicing the skill repeatedly. So here's where we can get into some gray area, I feel like. Because some of my clients, who can be obsessive, tell me they're practicing a skill, you know, and it's like, okay. Is the skill functional, is the question. So, you know, I think about my daughter. My daughter is playing ice hockey naturally because I'm originally from Canada, and so is my husband. So, as good Canadian parents, we had to, you know, expose her to hockey, of course. And I didn't realize how hard hockey is. Have any of you tried to ice skate? Okay. So I ice skate like this on the wall, which you can't play hockey doing that, right? And the stick, using a stick like to lean on when you're skating, will just impale you. So that doesn't work either. So watching my daughter practice hockey, it gets broken down into these very small skills, much like we would, and that's good teaching, and they do it over and over and over again. I mean, it could look obsessive, you know, it really could. But she's really working on something to get to the next thing, right? She's really trying to stay on her feet so that she can then use the stick. I don't know. I don't really understand. I just know it's really cold and nice. Okay. Being obsessed with a thing for a time being, but you're able to engage in the world. And so those of you that know me know I'm a little obsessed with Star Wars. I'm obsessed with Star Wars. It's not a little, I am. But I can still work. And I integrate it into my work, whether you like it or not. And then OCD is not a special interest. Yes? Right? Some people feel like some people's special interest is OCD. And it's not. Okay, and we'll get into that a little bit more. All right. What is it? What is OCD then? And these are the qualities of OCD. It's disturbing, it's unwanted, it's very rigid and rule-bound. The way that I think about that is when someone has to drive a certain way, and they really got to drive that way. Nothing else. You know, it's like if I drive or I veer off course, I have to, you know, I have to go back and I have to redo it. So it's rule-bound. The biggest thing for me when I'm thinking about whether an obsession's crossed over into this OCD category is time-consuming. How much time is the person engaged or held hostage by their OCD? How much time? For some of my clients that are really impacted by OCD, it's most of their day. Most of their day. Okay. It's persistent. It's super unproductive. And they know it's unproductive, but they can't help themselves. They know it's irrational, and I feel like it's debilitating. And this is what makes the D of the OCD. All right, so let's talk about some common obsessions. Now, we'll get to that later. So some common obsessions for OCD are the contamination category, the perfectionism category. But the perfectionism category includes being worried that I'm going to forget about things, remembering certain things. I can't discard things. Hoarding used to be under this category. It's now its own separate category. Fear of losing something so there's a perfectionism category. There's an unwanted sexual thoughts category that can get quite perverse actually, even though the person knows it's irrational, that can happen. Losing control. So fear of harming oneself or another person, even though there has been no history of aggression or any kind of violence. That can happen, right? Because they're irrational thoughts, okay? Harm, all right? So fear of hurting somebody, usually loved ones, by the way, but it's really not real. It's really not real. There's some religious ones which kind of surround blasphemy, immorality, and offending God. We can see those pieces. And then some of the other ones are like superstitions, even though like sports people are very superstitious, right? And they function, I think, I don't know. Or getting sick. All right. So some of the examples could be, I'm gonna repetitively hand wash, I'm gonna obsess about getting hurt, getting sick, I'm fearful of getting contaminated, arranging objects in specific patterns. People who have to rug tassels, that has been so debilitating for some people. Rug tassels. Having to have rug tassels all in order, things like this. That could be. So you see that. And then, like I said, it used to include hoarding, but now it's a separate diagnosis. That's still underneath. Yeah, it's its own category. Okay, so the question to ask yourself, if it's OCD, are some of these questions. Is the thought intrusive and unwanted? Do you have an unwanted, intrusive thought? Okay, so that's really important. Is a repetitive behavior present, but the behavior is used to neutralize the thought? Okay, so they're connected. All right. Is it interrupting daily life? Usually that's a yes. Because most people that talk to me about obsessions talk to me about the distress that it causes in their family. Can medication or substance use be the cause? Okay, so sometimes when people switch medications, when they're trying different things, they might try, we have to ask ourselves, is it due to a medical reason that we become anxious? Okay, and it's not an SSB. Okay, everyone knows what an SSB is? Yes? Self-stimulatory behavior. So if we're in the autism category, an SSB is a repetitive behavior. Okay. The difference there though is that repetitive behavior is not being driven by an unwanted thought. Okay. All right, so let's look, because you know what happens is I like to differentiate things in my office because it helps me find the just right intervention. Okay, so I like to say, if I can say, wow, this is fully OCD by itself, which is not usual, but that's nice and that's clean. The reality is my clients are more complex, right? They usually have autism, and then I've got it inevitably an anxiety-based kind of disorder alongside that. I might also have some learning challenges alongside that, maybe communication challenge, or so now I'm really thinking about this, but there is a distinct difference between OCD and ASD, and there really is, so let's look at the differences. In OCD, the unwanted thought triggers the behavior that neutralizes the anxiety. Right. Okay. In autism, self-stimulatory behaviors are not driven by thoughts or images. Usually, they're sensory, actually. They can be very sensory-based. But it's not being driven by this thinking. That's causing a lot of anxiety, okay? In autism, the special interest brings pleasure, not distress. Yes? And actually, yay for special interest, right? Because if you can take that special interest and you can direct it into a sustainable life, life is good, right? That's the name of the game. And actually in my practice, and Joyce was saying, and I don't work with little ones anymore because most of my little ones, some of the, I have a couple at Google now, and I have people at PCC, and I'm now, every single client I have is now taller than me. That happened this year, and I was like, what happened, So really, my specialty is really teens to adults, and the oldest adult I treat is 45, okay? So I get to see this, and I get to see how really nothing magical happens at 18, right? We know that. Nothing magical happens, and really, that's where the rubber's meeting the road, is 18 and over, and how we're trying to help our guys and gals have a sustainable, happy life. That's tough. It makes early intervention look really simple. Okay, how many of you have kids, or you've all come for a reason? I want you to think about that reason. They're over 15, raise your hand. Okay, under 15. Okay, I don't mean to be discouraging to the little ones, okay? The adults, it's a whole different ballgame. It's so funny, all the little ones are sitting in the back and all the big ones are sitting in the front. Yes, desperate. Tell us. What do we do? No, it's true. No, it's really true. I can be a little candid. Are there any little ones here? Oh. How old are you?
13.
You pretty mature 13? Sweet. All right. Okay. All right. Let's look at incidences, because it's pretty alarming actually. Up to 40% of individuals with ASD are also diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. Okay. 40%. That's a lot. My clinical experience tells me it's more, but that's my clinical experience. That's what's, being measured. Up to 17 of individuals with autism are diagnosed with OCD by the time they're 18. What do you think is the national incidence of OCD in our population? Not with individuals with ASD. What would you guess as a percentage? 5%. I wish I had a prize. That'd be awesome. The prize is that you know that you guessed right. It's intrinsic. Okay, so 5%. So if you look at that, look at how vulnerable our population is. And we just kind of know, like, the way that the brains are wired, they're really vulnerable and they can be very hyper-focused, right? And there's a good thing and a bad thing, right? Just like with all strengths, there's a weakness to that strength also. Okay, it's only really helpful to differentiate if it's going to direct your treatment in some way, shape, or form, right? It's like assessment. If you're not going to come up with something new, novel, or give you direction or a blueprint, why assess, right? This is the same thing, it's just in a smaller scale. So if you feel like, it really doesn't matter if it's OCD or ASD, it doesn't matter, or it's both, whatever, then you move in that direction. But knowing if the thought is driving the behavior is, I will say, the most critical piece, because that's what directs your intervention. Okay, out of curiosity, for the little ones, how young are we talking? Are we talking, who's 3 to 5 or under 5? Okay. 6 to 8. Okay, all right, and then 10 to 13? Okay, all right.
Can we ask a quick question?
Yeah.
If your patient is a nonverbal person, then how do you know if they have thoughts behind their repetitive?
That's a great question. One of the first things I do is I always try to crawl inside the head. If I can't do that, so let's say that I have a client that isn't, they're not typing, they're not showing me anything, then we use our best judgment. And we experiment. That's what we do. Inevitably, I'm always surprised by my clients, always, because they always, whenever I ask them about themselves, because I do that a lot, because I want to understand what, the things they give me blow me away. They always do. Something that one of my Caltech guys said to me that was really helpful for me is he said that anxiety is the shadow of intelligence. And that was always interesting to me because, and I see this, when I'm a very, very intellectual person, their anxiety gets higher, and I get that, right? Because it's like, wow, I've got a genius, mental level, like legit mental level person. He can think about 40 ways I could go bad. Me, average, 2 ways. See, I'm not as anxious, right? Because I didn't generate that. And that's what happens actually, because in my really, really, really bright guys, what happens is they kind of calculate every bad way that could go down, right? And then when they're telling me, it's like I feel anxious because I didn't even think about those ways, and I'm like, oh, now, great, I'm gonna think about that. They know those things. But when I can't get in there, and sometimes I can't get in there with my high intelligence guys because they're not communicating well, right? Then what I do is I take the person that knows them the best, whoever that is, and I say to that person, you need to, you're gonna train, you gotta interpret this. And we do our best, We also watch and look, right? If we're gonna try something, we really try it, we commit, and then we see what happened, and then we go from there. So that's what I would say to you. But that is a really great question because, and we'll get to treatment, one of the most effective treatments for OCD in general, not just for ASD, is cognitive behavioral therapy, right? But CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, only works if you can adjust cognitions, right? So that's why when someone says to me, hey, I want cognitive behavioral therapy, but I don't have someone that can tell me about their thoughts. I say, well, then we're not in that category. We can't be, right? But that doesn't mean that there's not hope, right? Okay, yeah, Joyce.
But it's obvious, right, that just because a person can't talk doesn't mean they don't have thoughts.
Right.
And clearly sometimes what helps when you're a parent is you say what you think the child would say if they could, you guess, and you'll see a look of, you understand me. And then you can do CBT. I did CBT
Yeah.
with Peter before he could talk.
Yeah.
Because I guessed what he meant, and then I addressed those thoughts, because lots of times the kid can understand much more than they can say.
And I would say, isn't that kind of the rule for most of us that are in the room? If we're thinking about the person that we're here for today, we know there's a greater receptive world than expressive world usually, okay? So we know that, and so, I mean, and Joyce is right. Joyce is masterful in her own way, because Joyce has a beautiful way of reflection. She's a therapist in her own right, but to be able to say, and that's why I say, take a guess, because you know your kid. Yeah, you know your kid. You know when it resonates with you. Okay, OCD is one of the hardest things I treat. Something that I don't treat in my office are skin picking and hair pulling. They are in this anxiety category too, and they are their own monsters, and they really have very specific treatments, okay? So do not lump skin picking and hair pulling in this category. But there's hope, there's real hope.
Are they OCD though?
Different, yeah, it's a different diagnosis. Are they anxious? Yes. Because it falls under the anxiety umbrella. Yeah?
It's not OCD.
No, not OCD. Yeah. Okay, so in general, OCD is best treated by behavioral therapies, CBT, and medication. All right. Obviously, medication is a very personal thing. And the thing I've learned about my clients is that they're atypical responders to medication. Right? Something that works for someone doesn't work for another person. It might have worked for 3 months. Then it doesn't work. The difference between 2 milligrams and 4 milligrams makes the biggest difference. I call them licks. How many licks of Prozac did you have? Was it 5 or 7? Because people are literally cutting pills down, like, I mean, they're splitting a 4 milligram in half, but it makes a difference. And so we got kiddos with very, very vulnerable neurological systems. And so if you do medication, you have to work with someone that is so savvy in this. And the timing of it, it's so complicated. This is definitely not my area. But I find that really helps. How do I see medication helping? Is it turns down the volume of the intrusive thinking so treatment can actually take hold, right? If I'm spending all of my resources on just dealing with the thoughts, I have nothing left, right? Our kids already, and I say kids, but I'm in my 40-year-old, they work really hard. And they work really hard at things that we might take for granted. So in my office, I have this, I call it my bucket theory, right? So if we all have different size buckets, because we all do, as the day goes on, that bucket gets full, right? We can just imagine water as being the stress, okay? When it gets to the top, it really doesn't matter if I got into a major fight with somebody or I got the wrong color pencil.
Water.
That drop is gonna make me overflow, yes? So the name of the game for us is always, hey, how do we keep ourselves regulated by having low water? Like, we're not at the top all the time, right? Because that's hard to live with, which I will say most of my clients work really hard and they're there. They wake up and their bucket's half full already because the sensory world is too bombarding for them already, okay? So we just have to kind of remember some of those things, and we'll talk more about that in regards to pacing. All right. The most common CBT treatment is exposure and response prevention, or exposure and visual prevention. We'll get more into that. That's really specific as a system. All right. And then CBT and medication are considered first-line treatments in general. Yeah.
Just when you're talking about medications, are you talking about anxiety medication?
Yeah, they usually are in that category. People, not that I want to get into a conversation about medication, but people have found the most, either you respond really well to SSRIs or you don't. Right, that's what I see. It's pretty categorically yay or nay. But when they work, hopefully for some period of time. So it just really takes a really savvy psychiatrist really to play around with that. There's something called GeneSight, actually, and if you're working with a psychiatrist, they can order it. And basically, it's a blood test, and they send your blood off, and they get your genetic makeup, and then they can tell you what categories of medications do well or metabolize well in your system. And it helps to kind of reduce some of that trial and error with medication. But some psychiatrists, that's been really helpful, so that we're not kind of just throwing something up at the wall and seeing if it sticks. Because the other thing too is, when you throw something up at the wall, you might not be hitting the dosage right either. So you could be, that category of medication could be good, but it's the dose that's off. But because the reaction was so poor, we came off of that medication completely. I mean, it's so complicated, which is why you want to work with someone who's great, Yeah.
GeneSight does a swab, but it's
a swab, it's not blood.
It's not blood.
Yeah.
It's really easy.
There you go.
How effective is it? I mean, our developmental pediatrician, she used it on our son.
Yeah.
And, but the psychiatrist said that, it's kind of iffy, and, everyone is not, behind the efficacy of what's going on.
Yeah, you know what, I feel like if it's benign, and it could help direct medication without so much experimentation, that could be helpful, It's especially helpful when I've got responders that are responding really poorly to medication in general. Yeah, they're having really severe reactions, yeah.
So, personalized medicine is not globalized yet. So we will see more of it, and as more doctors are on board with it, more doctors then will be behind it and say, oh yes, I've read the research. It may take us to go onto scholar.google, to find the research to present to them.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be peer reviewed.
Yeah.
Right.
To the point where then, it can get into
Yeah.
the system.
We know that there's a lag behind that, not that I'm saying like go and try anything and everything that's out there, but there is a lag behind research to,
And reality.
yeah, and those of you that struggle with OCD, you're like, I don't got that time, I don't have that time right now. There was another question, yeah.
Addictive behaviors.
Yes.
Is that?
No.
No.
So different. You know what though, there is an addictive quality to this in the sense that the one way that I've seen it, we'll get to this a little bit later, but the one way that I've seen OCD in some of my clients is not necessarily in the more traditional ways of like germ phobia or hand washing or arrangement, but it is in like this really crazed need to get a hold of something. And it's like almost crazy. And if I don't get that, whatever it is, it could be lint, I don't know. It really could be that lint. It makes me, that's all I can think about, and that becomes a trigger. And then I gotta get it. I have to get it. And everything in my life, I have to get that. And then let's say they get it. They want more of it, right? And I just spoke to someone who's like, I tried to have this conversation with my son. She said, you can have, okay, so here's a box of Mike and Ike's, okay? I'm not buying another box of Mike and Ike's for a week, all right? So you can have them all now, or we can split them up across the week. Now this is a very logical way of doing this, isn't it? Okay, so what do you think he chose? All at once, right? Okay, all right. And then what do you think happened right after? Right? And then what happens? Mom can't take him to the grocery store. They can't drive by a gas station. Like, anywhere that he knows that you can get Mike and Ike's, we have a problem. Which you can get Mike and Ike's in a lot of places, by the way. Okay? You know what I'm saying? And so that's something that I've seen. Addiction's really separate. And, addiction's been coming up quite a bit in my practice. I don't treat addiction because when I'm dealing with a chemical dependence specifically, so not my process order. So there's process process-based addictions, which would be the things you have to live with, like food and computers. That's a process addiction, versus a substance addiction. You got to get the substance addiction under control. You can't focus on anything else, actually. You're not stable enough to do anything else, and let me tell you that 50 minutes one time a week ain't gonna cut it for you, right? So addiction is very different, then it has its own categories of treatment. OCD is really more contained, if you will, even though it's pervasive in its own way, yeah.
If hoarding used to be part of OCD, now it's its own thing, is it just under the umbrella
Of anxiety still.
but
It's still
not-
under anxiety disorders, and it's as its own category, its own diagnostic code.
But not OCD.
Right.
But you said food and what other, like compulsive spending, sex
Mm-hmm.
addiction, is that all?
Those are addictions,
But
those
not
are addictions,
obsessive.
but not OCD. Yeah,
Because aren't those obsessive thoughts that lead to compulsive behavior?
Yeah.
Like eat, like I can't stop thinking about food,
Yeah.
even though I'm heavy, but I wanna keep eating.
Yeah.
or-
yeah. I think because they have their own categories of treatment. You know, addiction has its own really system of treatment that you really focus on that as a diagnosis in itself, right? But yeah, I mean, they're all, you can see how a lot of them are related though, can't you? It's
If you have an addictive personality
Yeah.
or an obsessive personality,
Yeah.
it kinda seems like the same kind of a person.
Yes. Oh, it can be. Yeah, it can be. It can be. Yeah. Yeah. Intrusive thinking is definitely at play, isn't it? Right? It's definitely at play, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So you can be obsessive, I'm sorry, like, start to.
Yeah.
But so you can be obsessive about certain things or like have certain obsessive behavior,
Mhm.
but not necessarily be OCD.
Correct. If you can like live in your world, like engage in your daily life and have that obsession, it's not a disorder. So special interests, a lot of families ask me like, gosh, I think that my kiddo has an like OCD, and I say, well, what is it? You know, and it's like, well, you know, they really like to, I don't know, let's see. Which one should we pull out?
Skateboard.
Oh,
Video
that's kind
games.
of good.
Video games,
Video
gaming,
games.
addiction to a game.
Okay, but remember to stay with OCD.
Band-Aids.
Band-Aids. I love it. Do they know everything about Band-Aids though? Like who the maker is, what the difference is?
It's just
Oh.
having to have them on.
Oh, no, I'm talking about a special interest. I mean, I can break down like, that's the Band-Aid brand, that's the Target brand. I don't like that Up and Up brand. I like, you know,
Bugs. And
bugs. So let's go bugs and animals. Let's bugs and animals as a special interest, right? Okay. Could it be productive?
Yeah.
Could your obsession about bugs and animals be obsessive? Hopefully so for a career, right? That would be phenomenal. I like to do that. That's like one of my most rewarding parts of my job. It's like, what really makes you tick? Okay, let's try to get you paid for that. You know, like that's the best way to land them into a sustainable career, right? What's hard is when they don't have any interest. I remember doing a career inventory on one of my clients, and he answered 0 on everything. And I was like, this questionnaire is useless because we got no information. The only information I got was like, okay, so basically, are you just gonna say yes to anything I tell you to do? And he was like, yeah, okay, I just don't want to get dirty. Great, let's try to get you, you know. But so you know, those special interests, you know, their obsessions only if like, I can't leave my home, I can't go to school, I can't go to work because I have to look at this bug. I have to research bugs. I can't leave my computer because I have to do bugs. You know what I'm saying? Like that would be, I would categorize that differently. I think we could do something really cool with bugs and animals. We might have done that. And woolly mammoths. Woolly mammoths is also another special interest. Yeah.
What is the career,
Bumblebee,
Oh.
and then got stung and wondered why, because she was petting it.
Oh. Does she still like bugs?
I don't know.
Okay.
I think
Okay.
she's moved on.
Oh, okay. Smart. It's very adaptive. Okay.
what is a career inventory? And it makes me think about that book from Temple Grandin, Careers for Asperger's.
Yeah.
can you, maybe that's a question for
Are we
later?
like so off topic? We're on careers. My 6 and unders are like, careers, no, I'm just kidding, okay. I can talk about that after. Okay, cool. We can talk about careers after. All right, where are we? Okay, no, what happened?
You missed a good slide.
I did, Andrea, thank you. Oh, I didn't even get there. Andrea, thank you so much. All right, let's talk about ERP really quick. Here's a pet peeve of mine, and know that I come from behavioral training. Okay, that's where I was. I could cut a Skittle into 8 pieces. Yep. All right, here we go. That was like 20 years ago. Here we go. ERP. All right. This is really powerful. This treatment is super powerful, but it's super complicated. And it sounds simple, but it's not easy. Okay? So here it is. You gotta have someone that knows what they're doing to do this, or else it can be really bad. And I'll talk to you about that. Often what I see, and you know what, I have my own ABA company, so I feel like I'm in the in-group, I can say this. A lot of times what happens in ABA programs is we say, you know what, I'm going to expose you to the distress, this trigger, and we're just gonna wait. Let's set a timer. Yeah? You're gonna wait it out. Now, I don't know how many people are doing that anymore, okay? But I do know it's still happening because people come into my office and tell me, well, my ABA people put on this, program, and they took what's really distressing and they exposed my child, and then what they expected was no presence of maladaptive behavior. That's what happened. That is really damaging, by the way, because the child is in distress. All right? So how many of you can think clearly in distress? We're actually not supposed to be thinking at all in distress. We're supposed to be getting on out of there, right? Or fighting our way out. That we are now in the alarm system. So it's really important that ERP, which is basically, I'm going to hierarchically rank triggers. Meaning, let's say my trigger is a public bathroom door. That's really common. That's a really common one, right? We might hierarchically say, okay, so the first exposure could be, I don't know, you touching any door, right? It's not a bathroom door, or so maybe it's my bedroom door, right? Then maybe I go to my front door. Maybe I do my own bathroom. But you see, and then maybe it's like a picture of the door. And then we help the person deal with the distress in an adaptive way, i.e. coping skills. So hopefully we've taught coping skills before the exposure even happened, right? So that happens a lot of times. For our younger ones, we're not always focused on coping skills, right? For those of you that have little ones, how many of you guys are working on mindfulness, deep breathing, and progressive muscle relaxation? How about psychoeducation about fight, flight, freeze? No, right? So you can't just kind of expect a person to be like, just do nothing, because what you're going to do is you're going to make them more anxious, is what's going to happen. All right? So we have to have a good repertoire of coping before we do any exposure. And that's why your therapist, your psychological people, in your life, are your better bets for this kind of treatment. Plus, it's super structured, super routinized, and super supervised, right? We tell you when you move to the next level of exposure. Okay? Yeah?
It sounds like treatment for phobia.
They do use ERP for phobias.
So is a phobia and OCD related?
Nope. Separate.
Because you have
Separate
fear of flying is my phobia.
Yeah.
So acrophobia, fear of heights,
Yeah.
is with that.
Yeah.
So I got treated for that in this way you're describing.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to apply that to the label OCD, and it doesn't apply. But it seems that it does apply because the fear I don't, or the thoughts I don't want.
Yes.
Are that I don't want to die.
Yeah. So in ERP, you're really treating the thought. Yes.
Okay.
Even in OCD, so you're really treating the obsession by preventing the compulsion. You see? So in OCD, what you want, when you're treating this one, you want to hierarchically, basically, list your triggers, and then you want an exposure of that trigger with a 0, ideally, distress, before you even move on to the next one.
Oh.
Or a 0 as in, I don't feel like I need to engage in that compulsion at all. I'm cool. Doesn't bother me at all. No, 0.
And this is the OCD.
Yes, yes, right. So for you, you were like, you know, I like to travel maybe because I like to see new places, but I have to fly. So I really want to work on that, let's just say.
Yeah.
All right. This is similar in the sense that, like, if I have a germ, if I'm doing something, if I've got something germy going on, what happens inevitably is my clients stay at home. Right?
Okay, yeah,
So
right,
we
you
want
avoid
to
it.
work, so we want the thoughts to come up as in like, oh, I can picture myself at the mall
Right.
without the need to go wash my hands. Yeah, that's what we're going for there. Yes? We're good. Okay. Okay, so I love the Big Bang Theory. How many of you like the Big You didn't watch the Big Bang Theory? Oh my gosh, it's so hilarious, and I love that it's like kind of based in tech. It's so funny. This one, and this one's just to lighten things up. You guys can you don't want to take it personally, right? Right? Because if you are, you take it up with me after. All right.